high school boys and girls are having a hop at the local soda fountain. Innocently, they dance. Innocent of a new and deadly menace lurking behind closed doors. Marijuana, the burning weed with its roots in hell. In this film, you will see the ease with which this vicious plant can be grown in your neighbor's yard, rolled into harmless-looking cigarettes, hidden in an innocent shoe or watch case.
If you want a good smoke, try one of these.
You will meet Bill, who once took pride in his strong will as he takes the first step toward enslavement.
Hello and welcome to Drive-In Double Feature Podcast. I'm Nathan.
I'm Ryan.
And this is the podcast where we do 2 movies a week every Tuesday and Thursday. And this Tuesday, we're talking about a cult classic from 1936. Is this the oldest? No. Freaks is the oldest, but this is very close to the oldest.
Well, we didn't do Freaks on this iteration of the show, so.
I guess you're right. So, yeah. But it's definitely one of the oldest that we've covered.
It's up there, yes.
It's Reefer Madness, a marijuana movie. I feel like I had known about this movie for just a long time. Even when I was young, I knew about Reefer Madness. It has that cult classic, worst of all time status to it. Are you the same way? Have you known about this movie for a long time?
I have. I've known about it just because it's always been like that big joke where everyone's just like, oh, this is like a big anti-weed movie or whatever. So it's one I've definitely been aware of for a really long time, I feel like. And I was actually really looking forward to seeing it because everyone speaks like, oh, it's one of those so bad it's good comedies.
Yeah. That's exactly what I had heard. I just heard it was so bad that it's good. Maybe not good, but so bad that you'll laugh. I've also heard that you smoke during this and you'll have a blast. I did not get high for this showing, unfortunately. I don't know if you did, Ryan.
I did not. No, I didn't indulge.
I was high on life watching Reefer Madness, also known as, has multiple titles. Tell Your Children, The Burning Question, Dope Addict, Doped Youth, or Love Madness. So you could have seen this under many titles.
Now, do you think any of those were superior titles, or did they finally go with the superior title?
Reefer Madness is definitely like, it hits, right? Reefer Madness is a great title. And it said a lot. They say reefer a lot in this movie. Everything marijuana related is a reefer. Like, they're like, oh, pass me the reefer.
Yeah. I wish they would go back to how they did it in The Cool and the Crazy and just call it M. Give me some of that M.
Yeah. Oh, that's a question I'm going to ask you. Did you like this or The Cool and the Crazy better?
All right. Well, I guess I'm getting it out there early. The Cool and the Crazy was 100 times better than Reefer Madness.
Yeah. So Reefer Madness is funny, but it is legitimately a bad movie.
It's awful. I did not like it.
Yeah. Cool and the Crazy is actually like, other than the anti-drug thing, it's actually a pretty good movie. One of my favorites we've talked about. Well,
that's what I was going to say. That's the difference between the two. I mean, philosophies aside and ideals, I mean, if something's well made, I can appreciate it on it for its own merits. And The Cool and the Crazy, I think despite it, the matter being so ridiculous, it's a good movie. I thought it was well made, well acted, and this one, it's like poorly made, really bad acting, and the story is boring.
Yeah, it's crazy how this movie is like, 60 minutes long?
And feels so much longer.
Yeah, it's so boring. And it's a movie that drops like a major plot line too halfway through. It does. It's kind of insane. It's like all over the place. And the plot line I'm talking about, we might be jumping a little far ahead, but Reefer Madness is anti-marijuana. So everybody who smokes it, it's like to the 10th degree of what you'd think a weed smoker would do. Dude smokes weed and he hits somebody walking across the street. And he never gets in trouble for that. He really hits him. It pops up a couple times like, oh, the cops are looking for the guy who did the hit and run.
Well, yeah. So
Nothing happens.
he was borrowing his sister's car,
Yeah.
and he, ran over a guy basically. And it was kind of funny because they said, well, they're like, oh, did the man die? And they're like, well, he wasn't killed, but that's no excuse either way. Like that would have been the plausible, well, he didn't die, so no harm, no foul.
Yeah, right.
I mean,
It's like what happened in the end. Well, we'll get into that later. But yeah, the movie has weird like jumps in logic and like moral questions to it, because it paints this weird thing. Because we have this main guy this whole time who's, I don't even know what he is. He's like a leader of some sort, like a Christian leader or a town leader, right?
yeah. I think I think so because well, I was like, I think he might have been a teacher, maybe, but because like
That's right. Yeah.
because he knew the kids really well, or like the teens, these adults pretending to be teenagers.
Yeah. And he has all this like facts and stuff to back it up, talking about how marijuana has made people crazy and murder other people. But then later on, he's equating that to, oh, this kid, he played baseball and he smoked weed and he missed the baseball every time the whole game. Like, that's just as bad as a murder on weed.
Well, they equate that. I mean, they make some really outrageous claims because the first 10 minutes of this movie is just kind of like weed educational type of stuff where it's like, oh, well, and it's really kind of funny almost because they're like, oh, see all these different places you can hide weed. It's almost like teaching people like where to hide weed. Like, oh, did you know you could hide weed in your shoe or like take the heel off and just do that?
It was really interesting, actually. It was like a documentary about like drug trafficking and everything, because it's like, oh yeah, look at where all this cocaine was hidden, or like heroin they talk about. They like go over all kinds of drugs. It's interesting.
I mean, it was almost, I would almost rather it just be like that, like really super cut and dry. Maybe that would have been something I would have liked to see more, but they make another bold claim that, one, you're going to be a murderer.
Yeah.
They say it's going to, random acts of violence will just occur if you're smoking weed. And also, too, they also said that marijuana was worse than heroin.
Yes, they do say that, which is absolutely insane. That like times were different, I guess, but I don't even know where they can get those like claims to back it up. Like, how do they back up this info?
Well, I guess back then you could just, I'm just go to the pharmacy, pick up some heroin and take it home.
Yeah, you could get cocaine, right? Like, that was a very easy.
My baby's having a little trouble sleeping. Can you give it a little heroin to go to sleep?
Yeah, exactly. But like, if you want to hang out with your friends and smoke a reefer, it's you're gonna go to prison for a long time.
And they also equate it with really terrible people. There's one character named Ralph who's kind of working for one of the drug dealers, and he kind of brings in the kids into like the drug den, gets them hooked on it. But like, one of the kids is like, that kid's bad news. Didn't you know his parents divorced? Like that, that is the end all be all. Like, oh, he's a terrible person because his parents got divorced.
Yeah, something that has nothing to do with him. That's what's... This movie has a really weird history where nobody really knows who wrote it or who really like funded it. And I guess there's like a long rumor that some Christian group did write this movie and make it, which would make a little more sense with some of the stuff that's written here, like that line. Christianity at that time.
Right. Well, the part I read is that a Christian group had financed this movie, and they kind of had a PSA at the time, and they were using that to educate children about marijuana. But then another film producer took that footage and just turned it into an exploitation movie.
That makes sense. Yeah, because it definitely seems like one movie collapsed into another one. It's so all over the place. And what's funny at first, so it goes from like this PSA like guy just teaching you about marijuana to like, he's like, oh, I have a story for you all of something that happened related to weed. And then we get our story. Weed kind of looks like fun Honestly, they're like sitting around in the living room, smoking, laughing, giggling, kind of chilling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It looks like they're dancing, playing music. I mean, it
Hmm.
looks pretty fun.
Yeah,
Huh.
honestly, and we watched the colorized version, and I love that the colorized version makes the smoke colored, like green and like pink and stuff.
That one was really cool. I went back and forth between them, and they actually did really extensive work to clean up that color version, because
Really?
if you go back and watch like a black and white version, it looks awful. Like the colors are so dark. It
Hmm.
just it's super grainy. So somebody took the original Reefer Madness, and they did I mean, so this might be a controversial take, but I think the color version is better than the black and white version.
It sounds like it. I didn't really watch the black and white versions. I don't have an opinion, but the colorized version I think was fine. It wasn't bad. It's not a classic, so it's not like,
No,
some like make Casablanca in
no,
color. It's a
no,
bad movie.
I disagree, Nathan. Ted Turner had the right idea. I'd take
Hmm.
every single black and white movie and make it color, in my
Yeah,
opinion.
yeah. It's so weird. Colorized black and white is so weird because it makes the colors like so like, I don't know how to explain it, like both
It,
vibrant and ugly at the same time.
it looks like if you took a blank picture and instead of just using paint, you used like chalk or something, like
Yes.
pastel type of colors.
Yeah, that's
That's what
actually perfect.
that's what it looks like it used. You just did like a chalk drawing. But I actually remember like watching, I mean, so, they did colorize a lot of old movies. And I
Hmm.
remember going out of my way when I was younger because I didn't want to watch black and white movies because I was a kid and I just equated that with something old. Like, well, why would I want to watch something old? So
Hmm.
I really wanted to watch color movies. So I'd like, oh, is there, I would seek out colored versions of black and white movies just so I could watch it.
I get that. I mean, no, I was the same way when I was. I think that's just the thing when you're younger. You're used to watching like bright, colorful animated movies. The color modern movies, and then black and white's a different thing. I didn't want to watch black and white movies when I was a kid. I really didn't. I know I wasn't a film fan at birth. I'm sorry.
You weren't, when you were 6 years old, you weren't asking your parents this, like, when are we going to watch the Orson Welles movie?
Yeah, so I've seen Citizen Kane 5 times. When are we gonna watch Touch of Evil?
Yeah.
Yeah, brilliant
Real,
stuff.
real spoiled as a child.
Yeah, it was.
Uh,
Man, but I hate that they didn't show me Reefer Madness. That should have been
well,
a childhood staple.
you weren't old enough for it yet.
Yeah, no, I guess not. Um,
Um, but
but
there's really like funny dialogue in this one too. I
mhm.
mean, there's really not much of a plot, really. It's just they go and these kids get hooked on marijuana, and then a terrible thing happens, and and they're just trying to deal with that. And they're like, don't let this be you. That's how it is. That's how the whole movie is basically.
Yeah, even the opening text crawl is like that. There's like a text crawl at the beginning, and it says, "Don't let this happen to your children, or yours, or
Or
yours."
yours.
Yeah, reading that, it gave me a headache. But they even say it at the end of the movie. Um,
The guy breaks the fourth wall and literally points at the
mhm.
screen and says, or yours.
Yeah, and then on the screen it pops up, "Tell your children."
I did. I told them not to
Yeah.
watch this movie.
Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah, exactly. It should be like you don't spoil this movie to your
Maybe
children.
that's what they were going for. They were trying to make weed look so interesting that parents would watch this and try to not get their kids to watch this movie. Tell your children not to watch this.
Yeah, there we go. You're smart. You're good. They realized what they had done. I mean, so they reference something that happened, and I guess this is why this movie got made, is that there was in Tampa, Florida, there was a guy who smoked weed and killed his whole family. Okay.
Typical Florida resident.
Yeah, I mean, it happens every day. But that happened, and then come to find out, he had a whole bunch of other issues, and it wasn't the weed that made him kill. But this movie definitely thinks that weed is going to make you kill, because there's this innocent kid, and he's named Billy, He shows up to this party. He smokes some weed. And oh no, he has a whole psychotic episode. He loses everything.
But Nathan, don't you remember when you smoked all that weed and killed all those people?
We don't talk about that. We don't have to talk about that on the podcast. Not my criminal history. That's the reason I took up podcasting, because they don't ask for your criminal records.
Podcasting doesn't drug test you.
Yeah, I can come to this show drunk if I want to, anything.
Perfect.
No, but you're right. There are some really funny lines when Billy shows up to the party and he's about to smoke a cigarette. And well, he offers a cigarette and she's like, "Oh, you want something good? Here you go," and passes him a joint. And then he puffs. He goes for it.
No, I was just gonna say another funny piece of dialogue is when I think his name was Jimmy and Billy is what their names were. Oh wait, that's a Double Dragon reference.
Yeah, Jimmy and Bimmy, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
But anyway, he's like saying, "Oh, let's hang out together." He's like, "Okay, hey, let me buy you a soda." And he goes, "No, I don't type that stuff." He says, "Oh, how about a root beer?" He's like, "Okay, that sounds good."
Well, root beer was in a league of its own in 1936, I guess.
But that's a soda.
I don't know. Maybe then it was. Maybe it was beer then. I don't know.
So it's just kids just drinking beer? I don't think so.
Yeah, you're right. Not in my anti-marijuana movie.
Listen, I'm okay with the kids drinking, but smoking weed, no thank you.
Yeah, they can drink and drive. I don't care, but they can't smoke and have a laugh. There's a really great scene with there's like one character who smokes and like has bipolar episodes. Really great scene of a girl playing piano and he's just like, faster, and he's high out of his mind making her play the piano faster and faster. Loved it.
The way she was just dancing, she was all over the place. She was just like, woo, woo. And just...
Yeah, it's funny because the movie we're going to be covering on Thursday also has a weird high dancing scene. So
we'll talk about that later.
Yeah.
I got some thoughts, but there's some other things that I liked is Billy and his girlfriend are sitting there talking, and they start talking about Romeo and Juliet, and he goes, "Man, Romeo and Juliet sure is swell."
Yeah, everything's swell in the 30s.
Well, they do. They say it again because Billy goes home and he has like a little bratty brother, and But I will say the kid in that movie, he's better than some of these other kid actors that we've seen.
Yeah, honestly.
I mean, that's a low bar, but still.
I think it's the writing that really is bad in that scene because it's like this teenager. Like he looks like he's
like the
about
kid's
to
dad.
graduate. Yeah, exactly. And this kid's like, "Oh, you have a girlfriend. You have a girlfriend." He's acting like a child. Like, "No, I don't. Shut your mouth." He'll chase them around.
Yeah, like how old is this guy supposed to be? And the kid is like, "Oh, well, she'd have to be swell if she was your girlfriend."
Yeah, wow, a compliment from the kid brother.
Right, yeah.
Yeah. Once again, which that character never returns. He's just there for that one scene.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
There's going back to like equating weed to some other like weird standards was they were talking about one girl and it sounded like they were talking about like, "Oh, weed turns you into a murderer or whatever," but then they mentioned like this one girl and they say it with such more conviction that like there's this one woman, she was in the company of 5 men. They say it like it's so much worse. Like they basically say like a woman that shacks up with 5 dudes is more egregious than murdering your entire family.
Yeah. It's this movie's politics are so weird. It also says that from what I got out of it, weed can make you have the superpower of changing time. Because it's like, it can change the passage of time. It can make things go faster, and it can make things go slower. And I think that they said it more like it was like some huge deal that you could do it.
Oh, it's like the watch and Trancers.
Just like the watch and Trancer. There is no bullet time, but we could say Reefer is the original bullet time.
There is no Jack Death, but there is death in this movie.
There is death. Billy, well, not Billy. There's like this. Billy freaks out. He has like a psychotic episode from smoking weed, which is one of the most creative parts of the movie because like it has like a, you know, like a, what do you call it? Fade in, fade out. All of his faces kind of flow around. Everything's hazy. He thinks his girl is sleeping with someone. There's another thing. It makes you think that weed makes you want to rape, which is crazy.
Because his girlfriend is getting assaulted, and the way he sees it, I mean, he sees her like struggling, like get off of me, leave me alone. But he's watching it happen, but in his mind, he's seeing her being like, oh yeah, that's great, yeah, keep going, and then eventually she gets shot by one of the other guys entering the room by like when they're struggling over the gun.
Yeah, and which is like the most, I mean, I get it's the 30s, but the little bullet wound, a little bit of red in her back is supposed to kill her. I thought that was a bit silly.
Yeah, she got hole punched and died.
Yeah. And yeah, I guess they hand the gun over to Billy and they're just like, Billy, you shot her, buddy. You gotta turn yourself in for this one.
Yeah, that was pretty funny.
Yeah. Otherwise, though,
okay. One other thing I could think of was, so the guy that's giving the speech at the beginning of the movie, you know, he's a total square. I want to say he's just like, weed is bad, and you know, don't ever do it. You know, he's real. You know, just he doesn't want anything to do with weed, and then Billy actually goes to talk to this guy, or like he invites Billy in, I forget. But anyway, he's like, oh, by the way, Billy, if you've been smoking any marijuana, don't feel free to confide in me. And I'm like, why would you confide in this guy that's clearly wanting this thing to be outlawed? And there's even like a big speech that's like, oh, the government, they've got stacks and stacks and cabinets full about marijuana and its dangers, but yet they do nothing about it.
Another weird thing actually I just thought of is nobody notices weed smell in this, because a lot of people show up to like apartments and stuff and like don't even like notice that people are smoking weed. Weed is stinky, if you didn't know that, listeners at home.
Well, yeah, so like I can go and you know, if I go into like a convenience store, and usually I definitely have seen it where people are just in their car, just hotboxing it, and there's just like a big cloud that opens when they open up their door. And then when they go in the store, I mean, it just reeks of weed. Like it looks like, it smells like they fell into like a big pile of it. It's really stinks.
Yeah, it's gross. And so like anybody would be able to know like, oh, people are smoking weed in here, because they pass off like a, you know, reefer as a cigarette a couple times. You would know. You would know if you weren't smoking a cigarette. I can promise you that.
Well, let's play devil's advocate a little bit. Now this is the 30s, so I don't know what bathing regimens were back then. Maybe it's like the 1800s where just everyone just smelled really bad and they just assumed it was BO. Everyone just a bunch of stinky people.
Yeah, nobody here has showered, gone into the basin to wash themselves in like weeks. I mean, you know what? You're probably right, because like, were people regularly wearing deodorant back in those days?
I mean, I guess, yeah. I mean, okay. So I mean, to our credit, this was 90 years ago. I mean, I don't want to say that. I don't want to say this was like the Stone Age or whatever, but I'm more philosophizing what the bathing regimens were back then.
Yeah. You know how people say New York smells bad now, and sure, it smelled bad back then.
So any of our listeners that were alive during the 30s, please email us and let us know how you bathed.
Yes, please. As the 30s are almost 100 years ago, coming up next decade, we got any 90-year-old fan? Well, we'd want them not being babies in the 30s either.
Yeah, I want them to be born in, you know, at least the 20s. You know, get like They were 10 years old during the 30s. They knew what was going on.
Okay, yeah, they understood the stink that they got into sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the problem is they forgot all about because they're on weed. Anyway.
Yeah, because Reefer Madness sold the world. Wow, weed looks kind of like fun. I could sit down and have a laugh or two.
I could tell you this, if weed was something where I could blow colored smoke out and just laugh and have a good time, I mean, I think I'd be doing it quite often.
Yeah, me too. And so people call this movie harmless, but I guess at the time it really pushed forward making sure marijuana was illegal across the country. A lot of people say that. And I think at the end of the day, I think this movie was boring, but I think what it pushes is really upsetting. You know, like it might be harmless now, but for its time, I'm sure it pushed a really just like awful message.
Yeah, well, I mean, if we're talking specifically about the movie's message, it's pretty offensive. I mean, it's just, there's a lot of the really offensive things in there in terms of, you know, how women are portrayed and how, you know, like I said, that just because they have outside marital relations and equating weed to murder and just basically labeling it as the most harmful drug, which is already outrageous enough, but it just kind of shows you like how far we've come. But I mean, weed has like a whole long history about why it's illegal, and there's all kinds of other issues why, but it just blows my mind that something like this that's clearly propaganda like was able to influence a lot of people. So, but again, you know, there's stuff like that now where it's clearly like really one-sided arguments that people are just like, yeah, I buy that.
Yeah, you'll get that a lot with like documentaries nowadays. You know, they push like one agenda and that's it, right? So, right. I mean, I guess they've just always existed in movies at the end of the day. What now might seem riveting documentary 100 years from now, people are going to be like, I can't believe that's what they were talking about. So I guess that's part of looking back at a movie that's 90 years old, almost 90 years old.
So I guess the big question is would you recommend this movie?
No. I wouldn't. I don't even think it's worth watching as like the worst movie ever made. You got to go see it. Because I don't even think it's the worst movie ever made, not at least in a funny way, really.
No, and there's much more entertaining bad movies to watch. And I mean, like I said, I didn't watch this under any influences, but even under the influence, I don't even know if I'd recommend that to somebody.
I would actually see myself being bored still. I don't know. It's not like what I would expect out of like a getting high movie. It doesn't do anything too crazy. It tells me that I'm going to murder someone on the drug that I'm on. No thanks.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But that's Reefer Madness. It's an hour-long movie. There really wasn't a lot to dig out of it.
No.
Nah. That's okay. Well, we got something special coming for you on Thursday. What's coming up next?
Well, we don't want this high to end, Nathan. So we're going to keep toking on to Thursday, and we're going to be covering 2006's The Evil Bong. We're going to be doing our second Charles Band movie, and The King, and it's going to be free on Tubi. So please listen along or watch along if you want to be with us.
Yeah, for sure. And if you want to recommend us anything, send an email over at drivein-double-feature-podcast@gmail.com. Follow us over at DIDF Pod over on Twitter. And also, we just launched our Patreon if you want to check us out. That's easy. Patreon.com/drivein-double-feature-podcast. If you want to help support the show, kind of help us pay for like Zoom payments or streaming and stuff, feel free to help us out over there. Of course, we don't have any like Patreon only stuff on there, so it would just be for helping the show.
If there's a demand in the future, we'll consider it. But for now, we're just general support. If you want, drop us drop us a couple. If not, totally get it. We'll still be here podcasting, having some fun.
Exactly. And until next time.
Until next time.
Debauchery, violence, murder, suicide, and the ultimate end of the marijuana addict. Hopeless insanity. See this important film now, before it is too late.